Hi ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. LaJoy here. I'm going to go over the solutions for the practice test. I will post the solutions as well on Edsby, but I want to go very quickly over the questions just so if you're stuck with a step that you see where that step came from. So for the first question, it asks us to find the expanded form of 4x plus 5 times 3x plus 1. So what we have to do here is expand it. We have to multiply these two brackets together. So I'm going to multiply 4x minus 5 times 3x minus 1. Remember that I put these arrows here because that way I make sure that I multiply everything in the first bracket by everything in the second bracket. So my arrows up at the top are for this first bracket. So 4x times 3x is 12x squared. 4x times 1 is 4x. That's negative 5 times 3x is negative 15x, and negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. Combine my like terms. The only like terms I have are the 4x and the negative 15x. Oops. So when I combine those like terms, I get negative 11x, and there's my answer. Okay? Next one, we've got the expanded form of 3x minus 5 squared. So remember that when we have a bracket like this that's squared, what that means is that bracket times itself. So 3x minus 5 times 3x minus 5. Again, I use my arrows to make sure that I multiply everything in the first bracket by everything in the second bracket. All right, so once I expand that, I end up with this long line here. 9x squared minus 15x minus 15x plus 25. So what I have to do now is I have to combine my like terms. So I end up with 9x squared minus 30x plus 25. All right, next one, let's move this up. Okay, the dimensions of a rectangle are 4x plus 7 by 3x plus 2. So we want to find the area of the rooftop. So really what they've given us here are a length and a width. Because remember, area is length times width. So we can say that the length is 4x plus 7 and the width is 3x plus 2. What I'm going to do, again, is expand these by multiplying everything in the first bracket by everything in the second bracket. Once I do that, I get my long line here, and then I combine my like terms. Once my like terms are combined, I get 12x squared plus 29x plus 14. Question 4 asks us to take this long line of terms, this trinomial, and factor it. So in order to factor this, first I have to take out anything common. So between these three terms, what is my greatest common factor? Well, it's only 3, okay? I can't take out any variables like x because my last term doesn't have an x on it, right? So the biggest thing I can take out of 12, 6, and 21 is 3. So remember from my previous video, I called these things the leftovers, right? I'm going to take out that 3 and divide everything in the bracket by 3. Whatever I have left, oh, see, I forgot to add my bracket here at the bottom for my answer. So I've taken out my common 3, and what I have left after I divide everything by 3 is 4x squared plus 2x plus 7. That is factored form. Okay, I can't go any further than that with this question. The next one is the multiple choice question. The correct answer is D. X squared minus 8 is not a difference of squares because we cannot square root 8. So there's nothing that multiplies by itself that gives us 8. So it would get decimal. So that one is not a difference of squares. The last one on this side here. The area of a rectangle is x squared minus 6x minus 7. Find the dimensions. So what we have to do here is factor this. They've given us the answer. This is the opposite to question 3. Question 3 gave us the dimensions, and asked us to find the area. This question gives us the area of the rectangle, and we have to find the dimensions. So I'm going to take this and factor it. So when we factor, remember that we have to look at our numbers, and we have to find something that when we multiply, we get -7, and when we add, we get -6. So what are those two numbers? +1 and -7. Because 1 times -7 is -7, and 1 plus -7 is -6. So those are our two numbers. So when we write it as factored, we have x plus 1, so one of the numbers, and x minus 7, the other number. So we had a +1 and a -7. And then I just took this one step further because it asked for the dimensions. So one of them is the length and one of them is the width. So I said L equals x plus 1, W equals x minus 7. All right, that's the first side of that page. Let's do the next side. So question 7. Factored form of 9x squared minus 49. So we have to factor this, right? Really, the easiest way to do this is to look at both of our terms separately. So what times what is going to give us 9? 3, right? So I've got a 3. What times what will give us our x squared? X, right? So 3x in both brackets, and then we have our -49. What times what is 49? What's the square root of 49? It's 7, right? So remember that with a difference of squares, one of them is a positive and one of them is a negative. So the factored form of this is 3x plus 7, 3x minus 7. All right. Number 8. We had two questions that asked us to expand and simplify. So for the first one, we have x minus 4 squared. Again, we can rewrite this as x minus 4 times x minus 4. Again, everything in the first bracket times everything in the second bracket. You end up with that long line of terms, and then you combine your like terms. So x squared minus 8x plus 16. For the second one, we want to take this and expand and then simplify it. So multiplying everything in the first bracket by everything in the second bracket, we get our long line of terms, and then we combine our like terms. Okay, number 9, factor these completely. So to factor them completely, we'll look at the first one. So this is similar to question 4, factor completely. So we want to look at this trinomial here and say, what is the greatest common factor? What is the biggest thing I can take out of 2x squared and 16x and -18? Again, it's going to only be a number because we don't have a variable on -18. So there's no common letter that can be taken out. So the greatest common factor here between 2, 16, and -18 is 2, right? So if I take out this 2, I want to figure out what I have left over. So I'm going to divide each term by 2. So my leftovers here, once I divide everything by 2, I have my x squared plus 8x minus 9. And I've got that 2 that I took out. But I have to take this one step further because it said to factor completely. When I look at what I have left in the bracket here, I can factor this, right? Because it starts with an x squared here. I can look at these and think, what do I have to, what are two numbers I can multiply to get -9 and add to get +8? Well, these numbers are -1 and +9, because -1 times +9 is -9, and -1 plus 9 is +8. So there's my factored form. For this one over here, I have 3x squared plus 18x minus 27. So again, I have to take my greatest common factor out. The greatest common factor between all these terms is just 3. That's the biggest thing I can take out of all of them. So again, I'm going to divide everything by 3. and I'm going to end up with 3, and then in the bracket I have all my leftovers. Greatest common factor, leftovers. I cannot factor x squared plus 6x minus 9 because there is nothing that I can multiply to get me a negative 9 and add to give me a positive 6. It doesn't work, so this is as far as we can go. Not a trick question. This is just completely factored already. Number 10. So number 10, determine the dimensions of a rectangle given the area. So this again is just like question 6, right? They've given us the area. We have to figure out what the dimensions were. So 36x squared minus 12x. Again, we've only got 2 terms, but still we're going to take out our greatest common factor. The greatest common factor between 36x squared and negative 12x, so the biggest thing is 12x. So if I take out 12x, divide both terms by that, what do I have left over? Well, I have 3x and I have a negative 1. So this is as far as this can factor. Since I'm looking for the area, and remember it's length times width, see I have this times this. So one of these is my length and one of them is my width. So I said 12x was my length and 3x minus 1 is my width. Same thing over here. They've given us this term here, 27x squared plus 81x. Again, we have to take out our greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor between 27x squared and 81x, both of them are going to have an x. The biggest number that can come out of both of them is 27. So 27x is our greatest common factor. So I'm going to take what I have in the bracket here, divide both terms by 27x, and see what I have left over. So 27x is outside the bracket. What do I have left over here? X plus 3, right? 27x squared divided by x. I just have a 27x. I just have an x left over. 81x divided by 27x is 3. So my length is one of the terms, and my width is the other term, right? This term times this term. So length, 27x, width, x plus 3. That's the first page done. All right. Second page, page 2. Let's see here. So, first question, factor each difference of squares. So again, remember we're going to end up with 2 things that are the same. The brackets are going to be the same except for the sign in between them. So, what times what is x squared? X times x, right? So both brackets have an x. Now we look at negative 196. What times what is 196? You can use the square root button on your calculator. So the square root of 196 is 14. So we're going to have plus 14 in one bracket, minus 14 in the other bracket. For this one here, again, it's the same thing. It's flipped though because we have our regular number that doesn't have a variable on it first, but it's going to work the same way. What times what is 25? 5. So both brackets have a 5 in them. What times what is 4? 2 times 2 is 4. So, and then we have our x times x is x squared. So one bracket has to have plus 2x, one bracket has minus 2x. If you're kind of confused on that, go back and watch the video where I talked about difference of squares. Okay, this one here. Oh, that's a long one. Okay, so question 12, here we go, says that the perimeter is 50 meters. The area is x squared plus 3x minus 18. So we have to find the dimensions. So the first thing is that our area equals this. Area equals x squared plus 3x minus 18. So I'm going to write down area equals x squared plus 3x minus 18. Now I can factor it to find my dimensions because I've been asked to find dimensions. So that means I have to take this and factor it. So what are two numbers that multiply to give me negative 18 and add to give me positive 3? Well, negative 3 times 6 is negative 18, and negative 3 plus 6 is positive 3. So there are my numbers, negative 3 and positive 6. So one of the dimensions is x minus 3. The other dimension is x plus 6. So I had to take this term and factor it. So there's my length and width. Once I have my length and width, now I need to recall that perimeter is 2 times length plus 2 times width. That's the formula for perimeter. So it told me in the question, if I scroll up here, told me in the question that the perimeter is equal to 50 meters. So when I use my perimeter formula, I'm going to put 50 equals because it told me 50 was the perimeter. Perimeter, 50. Okay? And then I have 2 times my length and 2 times my width. Well, I just did this, right? My length is x plus 6 and my width is x minus 3. So I'm going to plug in x plus 6 for L and x minus 3 for W. Okay? Then I have to expand. So I have to do 2 times x, 2x. 2 times 6, 12. 2 times x, 2x. 2 times negative 3, negative 6. Then I have to combine my like terms. So I have a 2x plus 2x gives me 4x. I have a 12 minus 6 gives me positive 6. Now I want to isolate my variable to figure out what x is. So I'm going to take this 6 and move it to the other side. So now I have 50 minus 6. Remember the sign changes because it goes from one side of the equation to the other. And on this side I'm left with 4x. So 50 minus 6 is 44. So I have 44 equals 4x. How do I get the x by itself? Divide both sides by 4. So 11 equals x. So if I now know that x equals 11, what is my actual length? Remember up here, I said length was x plus 6, and I said width was x minus 11. Well, now I know what x is, right? X equals 11. So I'm going to go back and plug it in for my length and width. So if I have x plus 6, but x is 11, 11 plus 6 equals 17 meters, right? It told us that the measurement was in meters. What's my width? X minus 3, well, x is 11. So 11 minus 3 is 8. So 8 meters. So these are my two measurements. I know that seemed like a lot of work to get to that process, but there will be a similar question to this for your quiz. So I want you to know the steps you need to go through to answer it. All right. Question 13. Okay. The floor is 2x plus 3 by 3x plus 1. So those are our dimensions of our floor. So first it asks for expanded form. So what I have to do here is I have to take my two dimensions and multiply them. So I'm going to expand, right? Use my distributive property. Everything in the first bracket times everything in the second bracket. 2x times 3x, 6x squared. 2x times 1, 2x. 3 times 3x, gives me a 9x. And 3 times 1 gives me 3. Combine my like terms, and this is my answer for expanded form. So this into this, right? I have taken this and expanded it. Okay, for B, now, if x equals 1 meter, what is the area to be carpeted? So this right here, this previous answer is going to be the area of the floor. So if my x is equal to 1 meter, let's figure out how many meters squared we have. So I'm going to take 1 and plug it in for the x's. So this is the same thing. Oops, my expanded form, my area. So let's rewrite it. 6x squared plus 11x plus 3. And I'm going to put 1 in for my x's. So 1 goes here and 1 goes here. And then we can just work through it. So I have to do my exponents first, right? 1 to the power of 2 is still 1. All right, now my exponents are gone. So now I'm going to work through the question from left to right. So 6 times 1 is 6. 11 times 1 is 11. And then I still have that 3. So combine all those terms together. 6 plus 11 plus 3, I get 20. So because this was area, we have to write our answer in units squared. And it told us that the unit was meters, right? So that means therefore 20 meters squared is the area to be carpeted, the area of that floor. Last part looks at the cost. So it tells us that the cost of carpet is going to be $10 per meter squared. How much will it cost to carpet the floor? Well, we know that we have 20 meters squared, and it's going to cost $10 for every meter squared. So I'm going to take 20 times 10, I get 200. So 200 what? Dollars, right? So therefore, $200 it will cost to carpet the floor. I hope that was helpful for you.